Today I will show you how you can create amazing sunset pictures by taking this raw file right here and turning it into a colorful and dynamic picture just like this one at the end, and all of that I'm gonna do in just about 5 minutes. So let's get started right away by bringing the color temperature further into the blues, and I'm doing that so I can go into the split toning, go into the highlights and add quite a lot of warmth here, and maybe even go into the shadows and add just a hint of pink. And let's go back up again. Definitely want to raise the shadows by 100 in this picture. Also decrease the highlights for some more sky and sun visibility. Now plus contrast really doesn't work here, so I'm actually going to go quite far into the minus. And I'm doing that while going a bit into the plus whites. Perhaps even go further into the minus color temperature. And I really start to like that look. Now blacks, there are some blacks needed, so let's just bring them down by around minus 30. Plus clarity would just make everything too much, so about minus 25 is where I'm gonna leave it at. And as you can see, there is a big fence down here because I shot this on the top of a tower, so I'm gonna crop that out. And since I already have kind of a panoramic aspect ratio with that, let's also take away some of the sky for a real panorama, and I love that look already. So let's go down real quick into the rest of the global adjustments, and here in the effects I definitely want to add some vignetting, bring the midpoint more towards the center and adjusting the feather. Really nothing crazy in terms of the vignetting, but a little bit will help. And with that being said, that's pretty much all in terms of the global adjustments. So let's go into the local adjustments, and first of all the graduated filters. Now as you can see, the entire picture is a little bit dull and boring, so I'm gonna grab one over the bottom left here and go further into the minus color temperature just with this side, and perhaps even go into the color itself and also adding some light blue here. And I really want to have this bottom left be very cold, and then as it gets closer to the sun I want to make it warmer and warmer. So that is why I'm adding another filter, and this time adding some warmth. I might go a little bit closer to the reds here as well to add some color in the sky. Additionally to just the warmth, let's grab another graduated filter over the very bottom left, and even go further into the kind of darkish blues, adding another filter over the bottom right real quick and adding some mixture between purple and blue. Then I definitely want to add another one over the entire foreground to increase some of the contrast and perhaps some of the clarity. Now I will have to go a bit into the minus exposure because I want this foreground to be relatively clear, relatively harsh in comparison to the sun, and then adding another one once again over the sun with a very soft graduation. Perhaps have to make the other one, the other graduation, even softer. And for the one over the sun, I'm going into the exact opposite, minus contrast, minus clarity, and even further into the warm color tones. So the entire idea I have here is as you come from the foreground it is harsh and cold, and as you get closer to the sun it becomes inviting and warm. So let's further adjust some of the colors with the graduated filters here. So I'm just adding one over the top left, perhaps add a bit of blue mixed with purple just to give a little bit of differentiation in terms of the color. Also want to add another one over the top right, and here I definitely want to add a bit of a different color, perhaps even a bit of blue, you know, as long as I don't go too far it won't really distract from the warm mood. I'm even gonna add another one over the very top left to increase some of the color here. It's all about the differentiation and creating interest within the colors. So a bit of purplish magenta color here, perhaps a bit more into the contrast, making it a bit darker. Then let's grab another graduated filter over the bottom half of the picture, or rather the very bottom to be honest here, fine-tuning some of the color temperature, making it a bit darker, then going over the very top here and making it even brighter by bringing up the whites and the exposure. So that's pretty much it in terms of the graduated filters. Now I'm just gonna add some plus exposure radial filters, mix that with some whites, some warms, and that is pretty much it. So now I just want to make it seem as if some of the light from the sun would have hit on the foreground. So I'm gonna make quite large filters, kind of angled like that. This looks pretty cool as well. Maybe even angle one over here. Want to keep having it looking natural, although just exaggerating the entire look. You can still do that while keeping it looking natural at the end. So let's add another few ones over here to add some blues, because it does look a little bit dull in this forest area. Just want to get some differentiation in there. Perhaps have to mix that with some minus saturation, some plus whites, plus contrast, then right click duplicate a little bit over here, and that I think is pretty much it. Perhaps a very last filter with even more orange over this area below the sun. And actually, while I'm at it, I'm gonna add a very big one and go a bit into the magenta color here, although not much saturation at all. Go into the plus exposure by quite a bit while going into the minus highlights. That way the entire area will become brighter, but the sun won't become clipped. And I'm really gonna add quite a lot of plus exposure here. And even though I said this would be the last filter, I do think I'm gonna have to add another one just with a little bit of minus exposure. Add that one right here, add another one over there. And it is very important that there is also some darkness, some differentiation in the exposure. Otherwise it will just become too flat. So I'm just real quick right click and duplicating some of them and adding them over some of these areas. So overall, I'm actually very happy. Perhaps I'm gonna go real quick back to the graduated filters. You know, it might be 8 minutes instead of around 5, but it's really not a big deal. So adding another one over the top left part of the picture, going a bit more into the blues. I really like the blues from the top left here. Also angling everything correctly. And that is pretty much how I want it. So adding another one with just color, this time over the bottom right, and making it a little bit warmer. You know, it definitely needs it here. It's closer to the foreground and way closer to the sun. So always want to make sure it works with the entire lighting and color scheme. And as I'm at it, I might as well also add some minus exposure by closing out the pictures on the top as well as the bottom. And by the way, you can hold down the shift key and you will get a perfectly straight graduated filter. Alright, I'm gonna say that I'm done here. I know this was very fast paced, but going from the raw file right here to the picture at the end, I think it is really much more interesting. It's also not just the classical sunset where you have everything warm. There are still some blue colors, some cool colors, and overall there's just a ton of differentiation. Again, this was a very fast-paced tutorial, and just imagine what kind of results you could get if you would spend like 20 minutes on an edit. You could really refine everything and make it look perfect at the end. And speaking of longer and more in-depth videos, in case you actually want to learn about Lightroom and what these sliders do, rather than just me moving and rushing through them, then you can click on one of these videos here on the screen, or maybe even subscribe. And there is definitely a lot more and much more in-depth information in there. So anyways, once again, thank you very much for watching and have a wonderful day.